Hello, everyone. My name is Nadine Chow. A quick visual description. I am an Asian individual. I'm wearing glasses. I have black shoulder-length hair. I'm wearing a black shirt with white stripes, black pants, and black shoes. And I am a senior this year, majoring in psychology, and I'm part of the undergraduate certificate in developmental disabilities. So my project was done in collaboration with the Neuroscience of Emotion and Thought Lab in the psychology department. And we wanted to better understand coping mechanisms in co-occurring ADHD and depression. So everyone experiences stress and has different ways of responding to these feelings, also known as coping mechanisms or coping strategies. And previous research has shown that ADHD is associated with using more maladaptive coping strategies. Maladaptive meaning that people tend to reduce their stress in ways that are often ineffective or unhealthy. And previous research has also shown that maladaptive coping is associated with depression. And we know that people can have both ADHD and depression, and these often co-occur together. However, little is known about how people with co-occurring ADHD and depression cope. And previous research on coping also tended to group coping mechanisms together and label them as adaptive or maladaptive, but I wanted to know what specific coping mechanisms this population tends to use. So the purpose of this project was to look at people with both ADHD and depression and investigate the unique ways that they may cope. To do so, participants filled out questionnaires to assess whether they had depression, ADHD, and their scores on a coping scale. And then they were put into groups, either the co-occurring ADHD and depression group or the control group without ADHD or depression. And then the coping mechanisms were categorized into coping styles, so either problem-focused, emotion-focused, or dysfunctional coping, and analyzed using one-way ANOVAs. And then a linear mixed model analysis was used to compare each of the 14 specific coping mechanisms between the groups. The results showed that people with co-occurring ADHD and depression tend to use more coping mechanisms in the dysfunctional coping style. And then the group with co-occurring ADHD and depression significantly used 8 of the 14 different coping mechanisms more than the control group. And the largest difference that I found was in self-blame specifically. So the co-occurring group tended to criticize or blame themselves more for situations in which they experience stress. So this research shows that co-occurring ADHD and depression often result in unique profiles that could be related to coping mechanisms. And these differences in executive functioning and thought patterns could explain this relationship. So for example, ADHD is associated with a more constant stream of thoughts where the mind may jump from one idea to the next, whereas depression is associated with more ruminative thinking where thoughts tend to be more sticky and a person might linger on a certain thought or repeat it in their heads. So there could be some interesting interactions happening here in the thoughts of a person with both ADHD and depression. And in the future, further research could also explore demographic differences in coping mechanisms in this group. For example, there could be differences between males and females, since ADHD tends to be diagnosed more in males. And there could also be interesting age differences in this group, since based on the aging literature, older adults tend to be better at regulating their emotions compared to younger adults, and that could come across as unique coping mechanisms as well. So overall, this study gives us a deeper look into how people with both ADHD and depression cope with stress. Thank you.
Okay, hello, my name is Joseph Frere. I'm a senior undergraduate, double majoring in psychology and neuroscience, and I am a certificate student in the Sonoran Center. So my project today is titled ADHD Night Owls, How Genes Determine Later Sleep and Wake Times. For some background, attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, or ADHD, is a neurodevelopmental disorder characterized by excessive inattentiveness and/or hyperactivity and impulsivity. ADHD is highly associated with sleep problems, and these can worsen certain symptoms for ADHD. 78% of children and adults with ADHD show evidence of a late chronotype, and then chronotypes represent different sleep preferences regulated by circadian rhythms and clock genes. Late chronotypes, or night owls, can struggle to sleep and wake up at typical times. So the purpose of this literature review aim to analyze clock genes associated with ADHD. And better understanding this chronotype may help explain sleep problems in ADHD and potentially help inform different sleep interventions. So what are clock genes? Clock genes are found in our body's internal biological clock. They help encode and regulate proteins such as clock, BMAL1, cry, and purr. The proteins clock and BMAL1 combine together on DNA to express the proteins cry and purr. Eventually, these combine together, and then cry and purr together will prevent activity from clock and BMAL1. Over time, purr and cry will separate, and it will allow activity to resume again for clock and BMAL1. This results in a near 24-hour cycle of expression for genes and proteins, and this is what sets our internal biological clock. This is found in the hypothalamus in a brain area called the suprachiasmatic nuclei, which uses this internal biological clock to regulate processes in circadian rhythms and can help to determine sleep and wake cycles or sleep and wake preferences. So some findings from the split review. Variants in genes for clock, PER1, BMAL2, and CRY2 have been found to be associated with ADHD. And then some of these variants are also associated with a late chronotype or sleep problems typically found in ADHD. There's also evidence of altered rhythmic expression of some clock genes in ADHD. And some studies even found that in an adult clinical sample for people with ADHD, there was no rhythmic expression of some of these proteins. So in conclusion, variants and altered expression of clock genes seem to be associated with ADHD. The late chronotype in people with ADHD may also be explained by genetic factors. However, all these studies are very recent, and they've only been conducted in populations outside of the US, like Europe or Asia. And then they've also had some mixed findings for the specific genetic variants and chronotypes in the ADHD participants. Future research should focus on how clock gene variants associated with ADHD can result in a late chronotype, as well as try to expand the samples to more inclusive demographics with more female participants and populations outside of just specific countries in Europe and Asia. So overall, people with ADHD may have a genetic predisposition for later sleep and wake times, and this might lead to certain sleep problems. Interventions and supports that adjust circadian rhythms or sleep schedule may help reduce sleep problems in ADHD. I would also like to acknowledge my mentors, Corey Manning and Dr. Michelle Perfect, for helping me with this project. And thank you. That's all.
Hello, everyone. I'm Andrew. I'm a senior here at the University of Arizona studying neuroscience, cognitive science, and biochemistry. And I am an undergraduate certificate student here at the Snowden Center. So I worked in collaboration with the Down Syndrome Research Group, which was led previously by Dr. Jamie Edgen here at the University of Arizona in the psychology department. In doing so, we explored the project of daily living skills and everyday behavior in looking at memory and executive control. So the aim of our project was to further analyze the relationships between adaptive behavior and executive control alongside with memory in order to gain a more comprehensive understanding of what adaptive behavior is. In doing so, our hypothesis was a prediction that we would be able to create a better, more comprehensive model of adaptive behavior by evaluating different data collected on each of the different cognitive tests. So I'm saying a lot of words like executive functioning, executive control, adaptive behavior, but what do these really mean? So executive functioning is encapsulated by three main different aspects with inhibitory control, working memory, and cognitive flexibility. Adaptive behavior, on the other hand, is encompassed by practical social skills that allow an individual to lead a more independent lifestyle. So with independent lifestyle, it's obviously important to be researching this particular topic, as that is something that individuals with disabilities do kind of intersect with a lot. So that led us to performing this actual experiment in which we were able to collect data from 46 participants, with 24 individuals having Down syndrome and 22 individuals that were typically developing. All of them were adolescents. In performing cognitive tests like the Vineland-2, the Brief-2, and the PAL FAMS, we were able to collect data on adaptive behavior, executive functioning, and memory, respectively, to those different cognitive tests. After performing bootstrap t-test and having utilizing the program R, we were able to develop a statistical model that created linear regressions of each of these in order to show a more understanding of the correlation between each of them. And so that brings us into some of the takeaways. So in the first figure, which is like the second image at the bottom, it displays the first takeaway of adaptive behavior decreasing with an increase in age. And so this is seen with both of the trend lines decreasing, showing that adaptive behavior was decreasing with an increase of age from left to right. The individuals that were typically developing are shown as the top line, and the individuals with Down syndrome were shown as the bottom line, showing that individuals that were typically developing tended to have higher adaptive behavior overall composite. And our second takeaway, we found that socialization is positively correlated to memory, but that was only observed in individuals with Down syndrome. So that was visualized in our second figure with the trend line showing in black at the beginning with a very strong increase positively, showing that with increased memory, there was an increase in socialization score, but alternatively, there was a more plateaued line for the typically developing individuals, showing that there wasn't a strong correlation between these two. The last takeaway that we were able to find was that maladaptive behavior tended to decrease in typically developing individuals than individuals with Down syndrome, consistent with age. So finally, in the last figure shown, again, the typically developing individuals were shown in a light blue color with a strong decrease in trend line, and the individuals with Down syndrome was more of a plateaued line, showing that maladaptive behavior as a whole was decreasing, but a lot stronger in typically developing individuals. So with all this different research, it's allowed us to have a more comprehensive understanding of how adaptive behavior can function between executive functioning and memory. But we'd like to obviously extend into future directions of establishing better models and looking in each of these different cognitive exams for specific domains and subdomains to test these theories. We'd also like to include and incorporate hippocampal data that we've collected through MRI scanning in order to see if there's other physiological components that can show and display such differences. But with all this information, hopefully it can allow us to have a more comprehensive understanding of adaptive behavior and help lead for implementation of further interventions that can aid individuals with disabilities. Thank you.
Hi, everybody. My name is Kate Longa. I'm a senior here at the U of A, and I am studying psychological science, and I am a interdisciplinary approach to disability in professional practice intern.
Hello, everyone. I'm Ajay Ayer. My pronouns are they, them. I'm currently a Spanish translation interpretation student, also studying pre-med, and I'm also taking a minor in honors health and human values.
All right, so the Autism Research Group within the Sonoran Center has several projects going on that we're excited to share with you today. Firstly, I will be presenting about our pilot study. Our pilot swim study is currently investigating the benefits of exercise with autistic kids. Last fall, I began working with Dr. Austin Duncan to recruit for and conduct our pilot study to find a link between socialization and exercise with kids with autism spectrum disorder. The U of A South Rec hosted swim lessons with a specifically trained instructor for participants at an affordable cost. And we began qualitatively gathering data through observing swim lessons and watching how the kids interacted with each other. From the responses we gathered during post-measure interviews, we found that parents and participants had largely positive experiences, and we're very excited to continue lessons in the future. Next semester, we hope to launch the second phase of this project, which is to expand the lessons to and our study to include not only adolescents with ASD, but adolescents with Down syndrome and neurotypical or typically developing adolescents as well.
So for my portion, I'll be talking about the Autistic and Neurodivergent Student Association. Well, post-secondary education has always been a space led primarily by neurotypical voices. However, these spaces also have a high percentage of neurodivergent youth. So 86% nationwide of autistic youth intend to pursue post-secondary education, whether that be just a 4-year degree or continue on to graduate school. And then as well in the United States, 0.3 to 1.9% of college students are diagnosed with autism, and then 5% of those college students are diagnosed with ADHD. And these are just a small percentage of those with ADHD and autism, because due to a variety of life circumstances, many may in the process of a later in life diagnosis, or many may choose to remain undiagnosed or self-identify with autism. And when these neurodivergent individuals reach colleges, many of the resources presented to them are highly medicalized. On campus, there are next to no spaces that are designed to socially celebrate neurological differences. So some of the resources that are presented to incoming students at the University of Arizona would be the DRC, the Disability Research Center, the SALT Center, or ABLE Clinic. So this is why in October of 2023, the Sonoran Center for Excellence in Disabilities decided to begin the Autistic and Neurodivergent Student Association, or ANSA. We are currently affiliated with the DCC as well, and we're a club run for neurodivergent students by neurodivergent students. So ANSA aims to provide a non-medicalized and safe space to connect with fellow neurodivergent wildcats. The club meets every Thursday from 6 p.m. to 7 p.m. and currently has an ongoing listserv, Discord, Instagram, and Facebook is upcoming. As the semester is almost over and finals are approaching, things are slowing down with our club. However, we are continuing to have the club, and we're planning on expanding the club next fall. So looking forward, we're going to have an increase in collaborations with cultural centers and clubs around campus. And one of our goals is continuing to grow membership and presence on campus. Also upcoming in our initiative is our plan to expand social community programs through Neurodiversity Day. This is a university-wide event that will feature a variety of community organizations from around Tucson in order to really celebrate the experience of being neurodivergent. So we're planning on bringing in some community speakers for the event, with a keynote speaker for the event to be held in the Neurodiversity Awareness Week in spring of 2025. This is a university-wide event on the UA Mall, so we're planning to have a variety of tables from groups around Tucson, as well as some food trucks and university events. So if you want to stay updated on this event, you can get more updates with the Sonoran Center. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Ella Randall. I'm a senior at the University of Arizona studying neuroscience and cognitive science, and I'm a student in the Sonoran Center's undergraduate certificate program in developmental disabilities. And today I'll be sharing my research I conducted with the Memory Development and Disorders Lab, looking at how swimming affects gist versus specific memory amongst children and young adults with Down syndrome compared to typically developing children and young adults. So for some background information, Down syndrome is an intellectual and developmental disability in which individuals have an extra copy of chromosome 21. So this can lead to a variety of challenges for this population, the first of which is in memory. So our study was interested in looking at how, at potential methods to improve specifically gist and explicit memory function. Gist memory function, or gist memory, is understanding the basic meaning of information, or rather the gist of it, while explicit memory is understanding specific details of information. Additionally, memory is stored and organized in sleep. Memory is stored and organized in sleep. However, in individuals with Down syndrome, it's very common to have sleep disruptions. So we were interested to see if this would lead to them using different memory strategies. On top of this, exercise has been found to improve memory function in the typically developing population, as well as in adults with Down syndrome. However, we were interested in looking at if there are aerobic exercise forms that can improve memory function in children and young adults with Down syndrome. And we chose swimming because it's a fun, inclusive, and accessible exercise form. And overall, our study hypothesized that individuals with Down syndrome would use more GIST strategies and swimming would improve memory function in the Down syndrome population. To do this, our lab held a free swim camp at the University of Arizona Campus Recreation Center over the course of 2 years. And in total, we had 47 participants, 22 with Down syndrome and 25 typically developing participants. Prior to and during the swim camp, we gave the participants a GIST versus explicit memory task. And for the results of our study, we found that participants with Down syndrome did use more GIST strategies compared to their typically developing peers. However, swimming did not impact their memory function. So some potential limitations of the study could have been that our memory task may have not had enough items on it, or the items may have been too simple. And on top of this, casual swimming may have not been the best exercise form, as it may have not provided enough exercise in order to impact memory function. Some strengths of the study were its accessibility, the diversity of our sample, as well as the memory task itself, because it was designed specifically for children with Down syndrome. And in the future, if the study were to be repeated, it would be beneficial for our memory tasks to have either more or more challenging items. Additionally, swimming lessons could be either for a longer duration, or they could just be made harder in general. The lab could also reach out to younger, typically developing participants, as it would allow us to more ideally age match them to participants with Down syndrome for the memory task. And studies should continue to look at ways to improve both short and long-term retention abilities in individuals with Down syndrome. So ultimately, this matters because while Down syndrome is a widely researched topic, there's a lack of research looking at how memory function works in individuals with Down syndrome. So it's important to find inclusive and accessible ways to improve memory function for individuals in this community. Additionally, for individuals with Down syndrome, there are a lot of barriers to exercise. So it's important to find fun exercise methods for this population that have potential other benefits as well to really engage individuals in this community and lead to positive impacts in their health and well-being. I would like to also acknowledge my mentors for this project, Allison Luongo, Dr. Jamie Edgen, Dr. Matt Grilly, and Dr. Austin Duncan for all of their help and feedback on this project. Thank you.